This is the video about build and use the bit items and the bit factors. Here on the left is the routine that builds the bit items and the bit factors. Over here on the right is a routine that uses the bit items and bit factors. And below that is a list of the options. For example, if the quantity is 0, no bits are set on. However, if the quantity is 1, it comes to offset 10 and says there's only 1 bit set on. If the quantity can be up to 2, there are 2 1 bits that are set on. If the quantity is 30 or 3, there's a 1 bit set on and the 2 bit is set on. We'll hold here and I'll show you what it means. If neither bit is on, the item isn't used at all. If the 1 bit is on, it's used 1 time. If only the 2 bit is on, it's used 2 times. If both of them are on, it's used 3 times. So this table tells it which bits to set on for each particular quantity, where the quantities are 10 apart. So 10, it's for 1, 20 for 2, 30 for 3, 40 for 4, and so forth through this list. Now we'll start going through the first routine, which builds the bit items and the bit factors. But first, it checks to see whether or not the particular item should be in the solution at all. We'll start at the first instruction. It sets B to 0. B is going to be used for the number of bits that are going to be in the list. It sets N to the item count and then subtracts 1 from N. The reason for that is it wants to go around this loop over I for the number of items, but it's going to start with I equal to 0. So it wants to go from 0 to N minus 1, 1 less than the item count. And here it starts at 4I0. First it checks to see if the maximum amount that can be used of this item is greater than 0. If it's not, it goes to DJ, which is down here, and just goes to the next item. So it hasn't made any bit items or bit factors for that particular item. Well, if it does have a quantity, the next thing it does, it goes down here and says, does it have a price? If the price is less than or equal to 0, well, then there's no sense including it. And again, it goes down to DJ, and that's the end of considering that item. Well, if it does have a maximum positive quantity, and it does have a price, it continues on. Sets K equal to I, L equal to 0, and X equal to 0. It's going to use X to determine whether or not this item should be included. Right now it's set to 0. Then it's going to go through a loop for J of 1. Down here to next J, the part count. It's going to go through and see if this item uses any parts. Well, it says first of all, if the requirement for the kth one is 0, it goes to DC, adds 20 to K, adds 1 to L, and it just goes to the next part. It's saying there's no requirement, so I don't have to do anything. I don't have to check if anything for that part is on hand. L is being used for the parts on hand. There you see it, on hand plus L. Well, if it is here, it sets X to 1, meaning that we should include this item. However, if it goes around here for every item and X is never set to 1, it comes down here and says if X is less than or equal to 0, go to DJ again. In other words, it never found any requirements, and if it found a requirement, there wasn't anything on hand. So it says can't include it. Well, if it still can include it, down here it sets item used for the ith one to 1, meaning this item is being used. Then it sets its quantity to the maximum amount that's allowed to be used. If that quantity is less than or equal to 31, it goes to DF, which is down here. 31 is the maximum amount that's allowed for any item. So if for some reason it got higher than that, it sets it back down to 31 and sets its maximum to 31. Now it's going to go down here and perform another loop. First it sets Q equal to 10. It multiplies Q by 10. Remember, Q is the quantity, multiplies it by 10. That's so it can use it with this table over here where the quantities are all 10 apart. Then it says for J of 1, set F to the option Q. That's from this table. Then if F is less than or equal to 0, it goes to DJ. That's down here. It's done. It has no more options in the table. Notice in the table there are values. As soon as there's no more values, there's 0 that is, it can stop. So it sets F to the options value, says if it's less than or equal to 0, we can stop. Otherwise, it sets the bit item for the bth one to I and sets the factor to that value of F. These values in here are the factors. 1 is a factor of 1. The second one is a factor of 2, unless it can only go up to the value of 2, 1 and 1. Then it's just 1 here and 1 there. Well, it remembers the bit number and the bit factor. Then it adds 1 to B because there's another pair of values for bit. And then it adds 1 to Q because it's going to go to the next column here in the table. And then we have our next J, which maximum it can be is 5. There's 5 columns actually in this table that are being used, because it can only go up to a value of 31. Case of being 31, there'd have to be a 1 here, a 2 here, a 4 here, 8 and an 8 here, and a 16 here. Then the sum of that is 31. So the highest it can go is 31, as we stated up here. So each time it goes around here, it can add another bit item, the bth one, says it remembers what item it was. It was the ith item that we got from going around the loop on I, and we know what the factor was. It gets it from this table. Now we're going to look at the routine that takes the best list information. That's the list that tells it which items are to be in the solution. And each bit tells which item it is. So we're going to take that information from the best solution and make the quantities for each one of the items. First it says all 8 quantities are 0. Then it says for n is equal to the bit count and subtract 1 from n, because it's going to go around for I equals 0 to I of n, 1 at a time. Since it's going to start at 0, we have to go around 1 less than the bit count. Well, here we start the loop for I of 0 to the value of n. First we check to see, is this bit in the solution? It's either 0, it's not in the solution, or 1, it is in the solution. If it's 0, it just goes to DE. There's not going to be anything added to any quantity. Next, though, if it says the bit is on, or this is a 1, it says set J to the item number for this ith bit. Then add to the quantity for the jth item the bit factor for this particular bit, which is bit factor I. Therefore, it increases it. For example, down here in the list, that could be a 2. So it says here, well, then I'm going to add 2 to the gray quantity. Once it's going around this for every one of the possible bits, it also says it's going to take those quantities and found and move them to quantity, all 8 of them, and then it goes home. Well, that's the end of this routine, and that's the end of this video.